Well, it'll still be very, very difficult because the all the information they've had so far in terms of contact has been active noise coming from the vehicle, from the submersible. And these ROVs, these remotely operated vehicles, are they're noisy in their own sense. They're usually hydraulically powered. They have even if they have electric motors, they generate a lot of their own noise. And so the sonars they're fitted with are usually active, which are used for imaging, and they have cameras. So that will give you perhaps 2,000 to 3,000 meters of range on a sonar, but it'll just tell you there's a blob there. It won't necessarily tell you what the shape of that blob is, and they're working in a wreckage field that's 3 to 5 nautical miles around the Titanic. So using the ROV as a search asset is probably not the easiest thing to do when all of the clues that are coming out of the banging that they're hearing and using the hydrophones from the sonar buoys on the surface.
So what in your mind would be the right process to then give people, these rescue efforts, the best chance to actually find the submersible and potentially free it and get it to come up to the surface, if it is on the seabed, of course?
Well, what they'll be able to achieve by the use of the sonar buoys is that they'll be able to triangulate it by getting cross bearings from multiple sonar buoys, and they will then know where it is in a latitude and longitude sense. They won't necessarily know if it's on the surface or on the bottom, and the best way to work out that is to look on the bottom in the place where you think it is. If it's not there, it must therefore be somewhere above it. It's not likely to be in mid-water. It's much more likely to be on the surface or just underneath it or on the seabed.
Yeah. You know, you're just emphasising how complicated this task is, and we're now entering into this sort of uncharted territory, 96 hours, where technically oxygen could have run out. Given that we're still hearing particularly these banging noises, do you think that's not necessarily a time frame that we should fixate on?
I don't think it is. And in fact, oxygen is, everybody focuses on oxygen, but the most dangerous gas in this environment is carbon dioxide. And that's what each person generates. And the more carbon dioxide that's in the air, you actually just fall asleep, and it's a sleep from which you never wake up. So I'd be much more concerned about the carbon dioxide. You can actually survive with low levels of oxygen for quite a while, but you can't survive with high levels, and you can't perform properly, and you can't think properly with high levels of carbon dioxide.
And that's a really important point. I mean, there is a world-renowned expert on board. I guess that's very critical in terms of going through the proper processes and doing things that potentially can help you be found.
Indeed. And that Frenchman who's on board I think he's the key to their survival. He's the one who would have really understood the way gases work and the way life support systems work. He's also the one who would almost certainly be the one who's initiated this 30-minute interval banging on the side of the hull, because that is the sort of sending a subliminal message to the searchers that I understand the way you're looking for me, and this is a clue that I'm actually the survivor here. I'm not just some random noise.
Tell me too, Frank, you know, even if they are able to triangulate the sounds and potentially locate it, one of the issues has been that it's potentially caught up in debris and part of the Titanic wreck. How tricky would an operation like that be to try and free a submersible? And is there any sort of vessel that could do that?
Oh, yes. In fact, these deep-sea ROVs that are down there now are exactly the ones that can do that. Excellent. They've got the power, they've got the manipulators, they've got all of the systems to dislodge that and pull it free. The challenge is finding it first.
Yeah. What are your thoughts at this 96-hour juncture just passed?
Excuse me. My thoughts are confident, or hopeful anyway. I won't say confident because they still haven't found it. If they had managed to triangulate and actually get a position of the submarine and not know where it was in a depth sense, then I'd be much more confident. But I don't have that at the moment. So what I see at the moment, and I'm sorry, I've got some gas in my eye, which is cool. What I do find is that because this time is running out, because they are really getting to the extremes of their life support endurance, things are becoming really very challenging. And if they are near the surface, they're not easy to find because it's white. It hasn't got sensors that are going to alert and trigger radar reflections or give light for searching forces to find them. So it's going to be, they could well be just floating around just under the surface and not be able to be seen.
Yeah. Frank, do you know, I mean, to watch something like this happen and with your involvement, do you think this really calls into question the sort of Titanic tourism that has been taking place?
I think what it brings into question is the sort of certification and licensing that is taking place. In one of your stories just earlier, they were talking about, of all of the deep sea diving submersibles, this is the only one that is unlicensed. And it's been a deliberate decision not to go down that path on the basis of it being a revolutionary system and therefore the licensors are unfamiliar with it. Well, I can tell you that the Remora, the submarine rescue vehicle that was built for Australia, in 23 weeks was completely revolutionary, had never been done before. And that they worked with the certifiers. And in that 23 weeks, they designed, built, tested, and flew it back to Australia to meet the deadline for the Collins class. Now, if that's a sign of bureaucratic obstinance and process-driven approach to it, then I think that somebody's got the wrong end of the stick.
Yeah, it needs to sort of be held account, but that may still yet be the case. Frank, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Beverley.